Well, hello there and welcome everyone to the Riches in the Niches show. I'm your host, Rob Jacoman. And guys, listen, we have a super exciting guest for you here. We're all in for a treat because we have Elliot Bassett, who's the president and partner of Ellerbrock-Norris and also the co-founder of Launch, which, by the way, is how we initially met each other.
Yeah.
I was blown away by your platform. We're going to dive deeper into that. But Elliot, you and I are very close. We've known each other now for maybe 1 or 2 years now. And I love your work, love your content. I love your model. Like what you guys are doing is absolutely unbelievable for the industry. So why don't you introduce yourself to everyone and let us know a little bit about yourself, the problems that you help to solve in both the agency side as well as Launch, and who do you serve?
Yeah, I think it's great. I appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, you're right. It's crazy how quickly like-minded people can come together and build a relationship, right? Because I think we're very like-minded in how we operate. But yeah, I mean, I've been in the industry, started right out of college in 2010. And, we were very much the independent insurance agency that we all know and love. And in 2015, 2016, decided to make a pretty big shift in the company to more of that risk management, risk advisory firm. And so since then, we've built out multiple divisions of the company. We built a software platform to help us implement the model that we're trying to drive. And then with the ultimate why that we're really trying to help small, medium-sized businesses that drive the economy in our local communities, right? They don't get a lot of the love and the guidance and the advice that they need. And a lot of times from an insurance perspective, we look at, we're just selling them the product, selling them the policy. And we really feel like we can do better than that. And so that's why we've opened Launch up to other agencies to be able to purchase essentially what is and was our proprietary technology. And then we've also started a podcast, as you mentioned, that you've come on graciously and we've had some good conversations with. But really to start that shift of let's go from just transactional selling and get better at that advisory consultative model that we know can help our clients.
Let's dive deeper into that because that's really interesting. What you guys are doing, and I'm a big fan of that model. Talk a little bit about the transformation. Like when you guys moved to that model, talk about the transformation and what that was able to do for the clients that you serve. And also from the business perspective, like how has it helped you guys with your value proposition, how you sell, how you bring in and attract new clients into, your team and your organization. Talk a little bit about what that model has done to really transform the agency.
Yeah. I mean, it's changed pretty much everything in how we not only interact and attract clients, but our client success and experience. But I think, we've obviously taken it to the nth degree and we've built, other divisions of the company to do multiple things. And I think though when people think of that advisory consultative model, they make it much bigger and harder in their mind than ultimately what it is and needs to be. And at the end of the day, what I'm talking about, if you just are in the commercial insurance industry space, we're really just talking about get away from selling on price, quoting business, just trying to win the next deal and get to trying to solve problems for your clients. Get to the point where you're understanding their business, their industry, what their problems are, and you're bringing solutions to those problems as it relates to insurance in your case. That's all the simpler it needs to be. It just is, it's the difference in the shift between let me quote your business and just have activity of quoting to let me come in and understand your business and try to see if I can help. I might not be able to, right? Maybe we aren't a good fit. But I think based on other businesses I work with, this is where niche selling comes in really imperatively. But you understand that niche, you understand that client, and you can really speak to them and understand their problems and then solve problems for them, solve those problems. And I mean, you'll win at a much higher rate and ultimately be doing a better service for your clients.
So that's I saw your post the other day, and what I thought was so awesome is if you remember the checklist post where sell this way or this way.
Yeah.
Like, how did you come up with that idea for that? Because it's spot on. You have one way traditionally, and I've been in this industry almost 20 years now, and the way the industry has shifted towards industry niche specialization and consultative selling. Talk a little bit about how did you come up with that idea for that particular post, and why is it resonating so well with so many people?
Well, I think I can't take credit for that post. Caleb Kramer, who's on our launch team, runs that side and came up with that concept. But, it's just, again, it's going from that model of what he does a really good job of is shows what does your client ultimately want? What do they want in an interaction with an insurance producer, advisor, whatever you want to call yourself? And so we've really been trying to frame some of those things around, here's the way it could be done today. Here's the way we feel like it should be done. And that was that post of kind of the checklist of looking at it from the client's perspective and what do they want to check the box on. Sometimes a client doesn't really care if you can save them that much money, right? They're really concerned about cyber right now, or really concerned about the tariffs or whatever. And that's more important to them than another quote on their insurance. And so again, it's just in how you approach it. And, he's done a great job with leaning into some of that in our posts and what we're doing.
So I have $1 million question for you. I mean, we might as well get the elephant right out of the room, because you and I, we can be straight up with each other.
That's right.
If you're a brand new producer right now, and you see a lot of the chatter online right now about cold calling and banging the phones and all this other like old school way of doing things, if you were a brand new producer right now, how would you go about building, growing, and scaling your book of business? Where would you start first?
Yeah.
Imagine you going back to that day when you're fresh out of school and you're ready, you're full of, excitement and energy to really kill it. What would you do first?
Yeah.
Talk us through that process.
Well, I think I'll go a couple different ways. I think when you look at that starting out, it can be very daunting, right? And especially this is where I think segmenting into some sort of a niche, just from a sheer efficiency of getting used to what you're doing, the insurance product you're selling, who you're selling it to, rather than trying to sell to everybody at a surface level, you can get much better quicker if you're focused in an area. But if I was back in that seat, I think you have to look at it as a combination when you first start out. I think it's important to invest in your brand, right? Invest in the content you're putting out, but understand that is not a recipe for getting leads day one, right? And so you have to have a combination. You're probably still going to have to do some cold calling or knocking on doors of the traditional networking, but make sure you're doing that to focus down the road on getting more of that brand out in the marketplace, the right connections, the right content out there. So that stuff, it lives forever. That stuff is out generating you leads constantly forever. But again, don't think that you can come in and just start posting on LinkedIn and you're all of a sudden going to be getting leads. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
And so you do have to do some of the grunt work sometimes up front in order to start building your book of business. But I think investing in that long-term strategy of building your brand online is ultimately where we're going to see in the future, those that do it are going to be head and shoulders above other folks that aren't doing the same thing. One of the coaches that I talk to a lot says, references that nobody can do business with you unless they know you. And he said, today I was on a call with him. He said, the more hands you shake, the more people you do business with. And it just makes sense. But you can do that in a lot of different ways. You can cold call a lot of people, or you can put your brand out online and have people in the right industries see what you want to do and drive leads that way. So hopefully that was long-winded answer to the question, but I think it's somewhat of both, but know where you're trying to get to long-term and the strategy you want to use long-term.
How important do you think, for a brand new producer to really hone in on an area of expertise that they can specialize in, go really deep in and master, so that they can get used to getting those reps at the plate and they can develop a mastery of a specific industry or target classes of business that are very similar? How important do you think that is?
I think it's incredibly important. And if not, one of the most important things you can do. And not even I think it's the best way to go grow your book. But I also think just in the work you can do for your client, it is also a better route to go, because you can learn quicker. You can understand what coverages are most important. You start to get claim scenarios and start to understand how those work with a specific type of client. Because, it's a blessing and a curse that in our industry, we can sell a product that everybody can buy or has to buy. And we can look at that in two ways. Oh, I have this giant pool of prospects, which if you're going to go after all of them, you're going to get this deep with all of them, surface level deep, and you're not going to make very many waves with any of them. Or you can say, what and who am I strategically positioned to help? Who do I understand? And let's go target them. It's still going to be a lot of people. There's a lot of businesses out there. That's a great way then to learn more efficiently. You can get good. You can take designations if you want, that are specific in that area. Your networking changes, your cold calling changes. If you're doing that, your content changes, all of those things. So I think it's just, if you want to get off the ground quickly, I think it's one of the best ways that you can. And also know you don't have to be locked into it. Try a few different things. You might start talking to these few clients and understand that's not the route you want to go. You really weren't, you didn't have the solutions you thought you did or whatever, and pivot, Nothing's saying you can't do that, but I think it can be very daunting as a new insurance producer to try to think through, who do I target? How do I sell? What questions do I ask? What language do I use? All those things. And that can be much quicker if you are segmented down to a type of client.
Totally agree. And, I think the other thing I want to pivot to, and this is where I want to bring in your expertise in building out Launch and the story that you have behind that, because anybody that doesn't know about your platform, to me, it's, if I had access to something like that, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I think it'd be a very different conversation we'd be having right now. But from your perspective, now that you've had enough reps and you've been in the industry a long time, what do clients really want and need from an agency or a producer? Like, what are they really looking for? Are they looking for just the best price? Are they looking for a world-class risk management program? What are they really looking for? Because I think that's also the $1 million question is, if you talk to enough people and you ask the right questions, you're going to learn exactly what it is that they are looking for and how you can solve that problem. So what are they really looking for? What's the magic answer?
Yeah. And I think this has always been the case, but I think it's become much more prevalent over the last 5 or 6 years, just as maybe 10 years, as everything has gotten so fast paced. But I think our clients want somebody that can come in and know and understand their business and can then give them the right advice, communicate on how they should approach things, versus just offering them some sort of a product and being a vendor. I think that they want, like in this market we're in right now, it's a very hard market. A lot of times they don't want you to find them a better option. They just want to know that you're on it. You understand it, what they want, where they want to get, and that you're helping them solve whatever major problem they have in their business. Because sometimes it's not what we think it is, right? And we have to go through a process to understand that. So I think business owners anymore, at least our experience has been that less that they want more quotes and more options, more that they want somebody to come in and sit and actually spend the time to understand their business and then bring them back insights that they wouldn't have other thought of so that they can make better decisions.
There you go. That's a true trusted advisor right there. That to me is, which then segues into how you guys are leveraging the Launch platform to enable producers to sell more effectively, to uncover problems and challenges that maybe a prospect didn't even realize. Can you dive in a little bit? Give us this 30,000 foot overview of what Launch is, the problems that you're helping to solve for insureds, and how you're empowering and enabling producers to sell more effectively through that platform.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to that experienced versus inexperienced young producer is the best way to describe it. But if you're experienced, you've had success in your career, you've probably developed a little bit of your own system and process to know and understand your clients. But it might have taken you 5, 10 years to get really good at that. And so we had that in our firm. And when we started down this path of really trying to systematize and scale a process that worked as we grew versus relying on, Rob to be really good at what Rob does, but because we don't really know what Rob does, we said, okay, let's learn what Rob does. Let's learn what really works and what can be replicated, which we turned that into assessments. What are the questions that we should be asking that get us the information we want to get and the data we want to get? Not what's your revenue? How many employees do you have? Not the standard insurance underwriting information that we're going to get, but the true questions that drive the conversations we want to have. That, again, an experienced producer is really good at typically. And we originally just developed those, and then we were using those assessments to go out in front of our clients, but realized that wasn't very scalable. It was very difficult to implement. And so that's when we built Launch, was to take that process that some of those more experienced producers, the questions they ask, be able to put them into a system that allows us to ask those consistently, to score them, to get insights with artificial intelligence, to present on them and really show the client a much different process of how we can solve their problems versus, the traditional insurance agent experience that they're used to. And so that's, I think, the biggest thing is that we realized is we can now make a young, inexperienced producer feel like they have the tools they need to be experienced and have a confident conversation with a prospect and ask the right questions. And how do I answer this question? I don't know. I haven't had this conversation 50 times. And Launch allows you to do all that and kind of walks you through the entire process.
I love it. So here's a follow-up to that, Elliot, is with the Launch platform, what is the resultant outcome that you guys are able to produce that provides real value to the end consumer, which essentially is the insured, because it's going to give them intel and insights into their business that maybe they never knew before, or maybe no one's ever presented it to them in this way. But I love the way you guys have this scoring system that really can score an insured on all these key performance indicators, what I call, maybe their work comp, their EMOD, their claims history, all these different things get factored into this scorecard. Then you guys, how do you use that information to help make an insured even better?
Yeah. So what we learned is the most impactful questions we could ask are behavioral based questions. If you think about take the work comp and the EMOD, for an example, a lot of firms are asking what their EMOD's at and, what are they doing to lower it and whatever. But we really focus on, we want to know where their EMOD is. We want to know the behaviors that they're doing that are driving that EMOD. That's ultimately what we can affect that are going to drive the experience mod down. And so that presented us with a challenge because those are very objective, they're behavioral based questions. It's not a 1, 2, 3, 4 answer. And so we developed a way that we can, ask that very open-ended objective question. And then we preload in answers that sound as if the client was answering this question in a bad way, an okay way, a good, and in a really good way, or however many answers you want to have in there. And so that allowed us to, when an inexperienced producer that doesn't really know or hasn't had the experience of asking these questions, they can ask it, listen to how the client responds, and pick the most accurate answer so that they can get it a consistent answer. But then what the system does on the back end is it's in real time scoring each of these answers, and they get a 0 to 1,000 score. And that score, what we talk to the client about is it's a baseline, right? It's where we're starting you at today. So we need to know where we're starting to see if we're improving. And if you think about that, the clients in our industry don't really have a scorecard of any nature to hold us accountable to. If they don't, it's premium, right? If the premium goes up, they're ticked. And if it goes down, they're like, oh, okay, you did your job. Well, we wanted to remove that and give them something to judge us by, because we all know, like right now, we could be doing all the right things and their premium's going up 20%. But that might be really good in the industry because their competitors are going up 40%. I don't know. But we wanted a way to show them that, hey, we're actually doing our job based on the problems you told us you had, the solutions that we're going to go implement, and we can see that we implemented them and that actually your score increased even though maybe your premium went up. And so we layered on AI into that as well to give us more depth of output, depth of analysis around that score. And so it'll actually read all the assessments and the answers and give us, here's the top 3 things that you should be concerned about, client. Here's some areas of opportunity. Here's what you're doing well. And that all gets exported into a report that you can use in your presentation with the client.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'd love to hear your position on this. I'm really sharing a lot more with producers and agency owners who we work with to really change the messaging around the things that you're talking about right now, because this could be really overwhelming and confusing. But at the end of the day, aren't you really focused on helping that business to become better, a lower risk business, so that they're actually helping to increase the value of that business? Because let's be honest, the way traditionally insurance has worked is we sell you a policy, we're selling you a product, but there's really nothing to measure that by in terms of other things that are outside of insurance. And when I say outside of insurance, it's like, talk about ways that we can leverage insurance and risk management to help increase the value of your business so that you are a more valuable business, but you're also a lower risk business should anybody ever decide that they want to buy your business. So can you talk a little bit about how you look at leveraging insurance and risk management and being proactive and using these kinds of tools to help make a business better, but not only lower risk, but also helping increase the value of that business. Do you feel that way about how you guys are selling?
Oh, 100%. I mean, this is built into our process that we use with clients. But if you talk to any sort of a business valuation expert or anybody that's helping businesses exit or business owners exit their business, the first thing that they will go to increase the value of that business is to de-risk the business. Because somebody coming in and buying the business doesn't want surprises. They want to know that, it's a low risk investment for them or as low as they can get it. And so that's the number one most valuable thing that a business owner can do. That puts us in a great position, right? And so I think most people, though, don't connect the dots for the business owner around that. And I'm not saying you got to be like, implement a work comp return to work program. It's going to increase the value of your company by 2 times or whatnot. No, just help them understand that concept. And then there are folks that will use, premium savings on work comp if they understand how the business gets valued to show that not only am I saving you this much money, I'm actually increasing the value of your firm or your company by this much. And that's based on profit and things. But connecting the dots around de-risking the business to overall value is super important to help that business owner understand it's not just about premium. It's not just about quoting your insurance. It's about de-risking you so that you can get a better value on the business. So 100%, we talk about that all the time. And then again, that score in launch helps us kind of get that baseline of where they're at, and they can see that improve over time, ideally, so that, they can see that should be impacting the value of their business.
That's what I love, is using actual data and metrics to be able to demonstrate the results and outcomes of the services that you guys are offering or providing to an insured, I think, and then using that as benchmarks to say, all right, how are we performing over time? Let's, at your renewal time, hey, let's see where you guys are on the scorecard to see how well we've pushed that needle and improved your business. And so here's my question. If that is true and you believe that, why do we see so much in the industry in terms of content and some of the things you see that are out there? People are so focused on praying and quoting and praying, and that whole model of I'm just going to be a quote machine as opposed to a true trusted advisor, somebody who's advising a client on all these different areas. Why is this not talked about more in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Who knows, right? I have some suspicions, which are, I think our industry, at the end of the day, you can make a good living by doing exactly as you mentioned. And ultimately, in my mind, not being a very good advisor, being more of that salesperson. How many times have we heard it's just a numbers game? Make enough calls, you'll get enough opportunities, you'll close enough deals, right? And I think that's just so ingrained because, again, we sell a product. Everybody has to buy. There's a lot of opportunity out there. If you just want to grind, you can make a good living. But again, I think it's really those that are getting intentional about how they're building their business and really want to stand out and differentiate are going down the paths that we mentioned and are seeing better results, seeing that it's actually easier to a degree. I mean, we work on far less clients than a lot of our competitors do because we're walking them through a product. Like, we don't get to the presentation stage unless we're pretty dang certain that we're actually going to win the deal because we've gone through the right amount of work versus wasting a ton of time and energy and resources quoting, all the things that we do to maybe win the deal, maybe get a better quote. And so I think we're seeing more of these conversations happen, more of that shift, I feel like. But, ultimately, again, that's why we do a lot of the things that we do of trying to spread this message of there's a better way not only to build your business, but also help your clients.
So, and man, there's so many places we can go, and I definitely want to continue. I think, man, you and I could turn this into an entire series. Trust me. There's no running out of ideas or great things to share because I think you have an insight into not only are you on the agency side, but you're also on the product, SaaS side of this business where you're actually having conversations with producers. You're having conversations with agency owners and all those in the industry and the distribution channel because you guys are trying to make your product even better. And that's what I think is so awesome. So if I was to ask you this, and you don't even have to think about it too much, but what's the first thing that comes to your mind? What is the number one problem that you think or feel that the industry is dealing with right now that if we solve it could really transform the way we do things in this industry and overall?
I mean, it's going to be repeating what we've already said, but I think it goes back to how we interact with our prospects in that sales process, whether or not we're going through a process of trying to quote their business and, win that way, or actually going through a process of trying to understand their business, solve their problems, differentiate with the intellectual property that you have. I think that's number one, because you bring a client in that way too, and it's going to be a lot harder for somebody to come in and quote their business because now they've experienced a better way to do it. So I think it's the way that we shift this entire industry. But it's got to be on that front end, because the minute you go to quote, I mean, we've gotten into this. The minute you go to quote a business, and you could walk them through the whole thing, and then we'll get a client at the end that's like, yeah, but can you give me a couple quotes just to make sure, just to make sure you can do better. And the minute we do that, you just retrain the client. That's the way you should do it, And I think we just have to hold that line that there's a better way to help our clients.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Again, that's another area we can go down that rabbit hole. Last question I have for you, because I think we're just going to have to continue the conversation, which is a good thing. Last question I have for you in this area is, how do you feel AI and some of the innovations in technology are really going to transform the way agencies are, number one, the way agencies are built, but also the way producers and agency owners sell? Like, how much do you think AI is going to have an impact on the different areas of the marketing and sales model that we currently have now?
Dude, this is 2 hours in and of itself, but we'll try to be brief. I mean, I think it's going to affect every aspect of our companies and our industry. Do I think it's going to ultimately replace us? No, but I'll give you a couple examples. I mean, it's already very good at what I'll call the transactional back end work, right? If a lot of people sell on coverage analysis, right? If you're selling on coverage analysis, you're already outdated, because AI is already doing that better than any of us can do, or policy checking, or, it's already very good at that stuff. Now, what we're really leaning into is saying, let's try to figure out how we can use AI for those types of tasks that free us up as a human being to create relationships with our clients, to spend more time understanding their business. Because our big bet is that when something happens in a client's business, they're not going to want to chat with ChatGPT. They're not going to want to say, oh my God, this claim just happened. What do I do? My building just burned down. They're going to want to pick up the phone and say, Rob, my building just burned down. What do I do? And they want empathy. They want you to talk through it with them. They want you to call them back the next day and say, okay, we're walking through this. Here's what we're going to do. But you can't do that if you don't have the time and the resources to do it. And so we view that as relationships. We're putting a big emphasis on, making the back end processes much more efficient with AI and all the tools and tech that's out there today. But that front end, we're investing more in our human interaction, I think, than what I see a lot of the industry doing, which is less in the human interaction, because they want efficiency. They want chat bots. They want, all of that BS, which certainly have their place. But I think those that are investing in relationship and in that human optimized approach are going to be the ones that, in a world of AI, are still relevant.
Love it. So it's like future-proof your agency.
Yeah.
Build systems to enable you to spend more time in front of customers and prospects so that you can solve real problems and challenges that they're having and really understand their business. That's essentially what I'm hearing you say. All right. So here's my last question before we land this plane. In the area of content creation, let's talk about building a media empire. If you're an agency, what is one piece of advice that you would give to an agency owner or producer I have no idea what kind of content to create. I'm not even sure where to start, but Elliot, you guys do a phenomenal job at the content piece, because you're always, it seems like every time I open up LinkedIn, I see you guys sharing, dropping value bombs and sharing great videos. What's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's still not producing consistent content? How would you go about that process? What would you recommend for a producer or agency owner who wants to get into that, but they just don't know where to start?
Yeah. The main underlying concept, I would say, is speak to and about your clients and their problems, not about you. oftentimes we want to post about how good we are and how awesome we do. The things that we see the most interaction on are the 7 things that contractors should be concerned about that could put them out of business, or things like that, are more educational, but that a contractor, it feels like, is about them. Now it feels like we understand their business, so on and so forth. There's if you have no idea where to even start with that, there's good books like They Ask, You Answer. So just essentially your clients ask a question, write it down, answer it in a video or answer it in content. Things like that are super easy to do. But that's the main thing. Always try to make it about your client, about their problems, and not about you and your firm.
Love that. It's great advice. So Elliot, how can people get in touch with you if they wanted to learn more about Launch and the platform that you guys have built and are having success with? How can agencies or producers reach out and learn more about Launch and connect with you?
Yeah, appreciate that. I'm on LinkedIn, all the socials, LinkedIn, Elliot Bassett. I do a lot on Instagram at Elliot.Bassett. Reach out, DM me on either of those. And for folks that are listening, that feel like this is a concept they want to learn, we've actually built on the Launch side producer validation playbook that is 3 or 4 different playbooks built into one that we are happy to provide or send out. Just send me a direct message, put in there validation-Rob. That's how I know you'll get it from this podcast, and we'll go ahead and send it. But it's really, it's all the same stuff that Rob talks about a lot. Like I said, him and I are aligned, but it's really, and if you're a new producer, the playbook you need to get up and running. And so we're happy to share that and connect on social, and would love to talk.
I think what you guys are doing is awesome. I'm so grateful and always honored to be in your tight-knit circle, because listen, this is an industry that we all know each other, and we're all very well connected, and it's a small world, but it's a big industry, and you guys are doing phenomenal work. And I see and feel the passion, the enthusiasm, and what you guys are bringing to the table for agencies, and really helping to make a difference in the way they do things, the way they're growing their businesses. And it always rings through. Every time I see a piece of content from you guys, it's always from the heart of, like, how can we make you be better? How can we help you grow? How can we make you a better producer and give even more value to your clients and the people that you work with? So
yeah, appreciate
Elliot,
that.
thank you so much. We appreciate it. Guys, another great episode in the works here. And I think we're going to probably connect again and on another episode. And let's do another one on just AI and what you guys are seeing. And if you were open up your, look into your crystal ball, what do you see as far as AI and how it's transforming? And maybe we talk about more examples of stuff that you're seeing out there that people need to be aware of, and show them, like, this is how you would be implementing this into your agency, or, a way to help you leverage and grow even more. So Elliot, thank you so much for your time, man. Yeah. We'll see you again on another episode, right?
I'm ready.
All right, guys.
I appreciate it.
Take care, everyone.